In August 2019, Greta Thunberg embarked on a journey from the UK to the US aboard a zero-emissions raceboat. Her expedition shed light on the impact of commercial aviation on climate change. In 2018, international air travel accounted for 2.4% of global CO2 emissions from fossil fuel use. To put this into perspective, in 2018, commercial aviation emitted almost as much CO2 as Germany and the Netherlands combined.
My name is Dan Rutherford. I'm the Aviation Program Director at the International Council on Clean Transportation. We analyzed a global data set of aircraft operations in 2018, and what we found is that overall commercial aviation emitted more than 900 million metric tons of CO2. So treated as a country, it would be the sixth largest emitter of fossil CO2. And we found that emissions overall are growing much faster than we originally expected. The business as usual projection is that aviation CO2 emissions will triple by mid-century, but that assumes about 3% growth per year. Our report actually suggests about 5.7% growth, so tripling is probably on the low end of what we'd expect.
If you're worried about climate change, these alarming findings certainly make you more aware of your own flying habits. If you're a frequent flyer, you might even feel guilty. In Sweden, they actually have a word for that: flygskam.
It's a compound of flyg, flight, and skam, which is shame, obviously, and historically the same words as the English ones. It means basically the guilt you feel about your flying habits and the impact they have on climate change. My name is Ola Karlsson. I'm a language advisor at the Swedish Language Council in Sweden. We publish a list of new words around Christmas every year, and flygskam was one of around 30 or 40 words that we published in 2018. We want to pick words that say something about the past year and reflects the development of society and recent phenomenon in society. Many people say that language in itself does not affect our thinking, but I think that sometimes words and new words like flygskam can convey some kind of message and indirectly influence opinions. And at least in Sweden, flying has decreased. It's commonly supposed that flight shame and indirectly the expression itself plays a part in that.
In Sweden, the number of passengers embarking on domestic flights decreased by 3.4% in 2018. In the same year, SJ, a state-owned train operator, carried 2 million more passengers than the year before. Cutting back on air travel by swapping planes for trains might be the best way forward, but it might not always be realistic. We wanted to find out whether there are other steps that we can take when there is no alternative to flying. But first of all, who, if anyone, should be ashamed of flying really?
It turns out that most of the world does not fly, and that a disproportionate amount of the flying is done by a relatively small group. So in countries like the UK and the United States, typically about 15% of the population takes about 70% of the flights. So if you're in that group, then probably you should be thinking about changing your behavior.
So what can we do to reduce our carbon footprint when flying?
Just saying you shouldn't be guilty about flying doesn't mean you shouldn't be taking other actions to fly more efficiently. The bad news is that the data is all available for the airlines to allow us to directly choose more fuel-efficient flights. However, they're not currently disclosing that data to the consumer. The good news is that even if you don't have that data, there are certain tricks you could use to fly more efficiently. And I call it flying like a nerd, N-E-R-D. And that acronym stands for New, Economy, Regular, and Direct. New refers to trying to fly on newer aircraft. So generally, the fuel efficiency of aircraft improves from generation to generation. And an aircraft like the A320neo or the 787 Dreamliner will be about 15% more fuel efficient than an older aircraft. So if you can, and you know the numbers for a new aircraft, you can try and book your ticket on them. Flying economy, when you do fly, will improve the fuel efficiency. If you're sitting in the back of the plane, there are more seats there, and also the load factor is higher. So more of the seats are full in the back than in premium seating. Regular is a little bit of the tricky one. Generally, there are multiple aircraft sizes, and the most fuel efficient sizes are the single aisle and the small twin aisle aircraft. Those tend to be large enough to be fuel efficient, but small enough to only have 2 engines. So if you fly in very small regional jets or very large aircraft that have 4 engines, then you'll burn more fuel. So try to stick with the regular sized aircraft. And direct is pretty straightforward. Layovers tend to take you away from the Great Circle distance that goes directly from your origin airport to your destination airport. So whenever you can, you try to fly direct to reduce your carbon emissions. These 4 rules, this flying like a nerd, can be helpful for individuals who don't have access to data to choose lower carbon flights. But it's really important that airlines and then governments move in the direction of better data disclosure. And there is an example actually in Sweden. So recently there's been a proposal for airlines to disclose the carbon intensity of their flights within Sweden. So that's, I think, a good example of a government that's taking positive steps in this direction. I think it's important to remember that flying shame started out with a group of people that were concerned about their own behavior, wanted to change their own behavior to sort of set a model for how others might act. It's not flight shaming. It's not you're bad because you take a flight. It's I want to prove that I can reduce my carbon footprint. Reducing your flying or trying to fly more efficiently is a way as an individual you can show that you're committed to these larger societal causes.